What's going on, guys? Ahmed back with another video here today to give you part 2 of the artist review series. This time to talk about Lil TECCA. Just for some context, I overall would say I'm a pretty big fan of Lil TECCA overall. Before going through this experience of listening through all of his albums, I was of course introduced to him, as many people were, through Ransom, and really was attached to some of his songs coming up. And, just as somebody else who has glasses and is, has that certain appearance, I was really glad to see him burst onto the rap game and do his thing. But I was curious to see what he was like album to album, and wanted to give you all my honest opinion on where he's at in his career. So let's get into it. So let's start with his discog. Honestly, We Love You TECCA 1 was a bit underwhelming, I feel like. Obviously, I know why it came out. It's similar to That's What They All Say by Jack Harlow. It was an album, maybe that was a bit rushed, but had to come out because Lil TECCA at the time was extremely hot. And we had to sort of get a batch of songs just to cash in on that hype. But I didn't really think it was that good. It wasn't necessarily a bad album, but it could have been better. There were definitely a lot of glaring issues that I felt listening throughout the album. But going into some of the good things, I really enjoyed. Some of the choruses were pretty strong. Some of the highlights were definitely Did It Again and Ransom. But overall, lackluster flows. There were certain times where he was just, frankly, rapping off beat. Really just bad lyrics. Like, the lyrics kind of just, I didn't feel anything. There was nothing to be felt in the lyrics. Not that much there was a heavy presence of immaturity throughout his writing that was a bit disappointing. And overall, the album was extremely long and very hard to get through overall, with a lot of non-conjointed song ideas. And so, yeah, not the best start, but again, it's his first album, and it was pretty obvious listening to it that it was kind of an album as a way to cash in on some of the hype. Now, let's talk about Virgo's World. Virgo's World, I was actually expecting to not like, since the general consensus of the community from what I've seen is that Virgo World is actually worse than We Love You TECCA 2. So I wasn't expecting that much from this album, but overall, it was a really, really good album, especially in comparison to We Love You TECCA 1. We're going to talk about this more in the advantage section and the appeal section. But one of the things that really, really impressed me was the improvement on his writing on this album. It felt like it was a lot more maturity there. He had figured out a lot of stuff just in his life and in his relationships. And he seemed a lot more motivated just from a delivery and energies perspective on the album. And it was really interesting to listen to. Some of the flows had come up. I could tell that he was really fully committing to certain song ideas, such as Afrobeats, which is something that he does consistently that I really, really enjoy. I feel like, unlike maybe a Drake, he really brings his own sort of techno-infused vocals into the Afrobeats and really creates something that's all its own that I really, really enjoy. And overall, Virgo World was a pretty solid album. That first 5 or 6 song run, man, that was something special. I was really kind of shocked with how much growth he displayed on this record, and was very happy to see that a lot of the stuff, like I said, that I wasn't that big of a fan of on the first record was generally fixed, and the things that I loved about him, such as his choruses, were improved, and a lot of the production was a lot more lush. There was a lot more going on. It was a lot less empty. So yeah, overall, Virgo World was definitely him on an upward trajectory. And then you had We Love You TECCA 2, and man, this was a good album. This was a very good album. We kind of kept up the lyrical maturity. Of course, we didn't drop that, which was really nice to see. But we got better flows. And if you remember, We Love You TECCA 1, some of the flows weren't that great to me, especially in the verses. There was some highlights, right? Like Count Me Out, like Did It Again, like Shots. But in a lot of songs like Amigo, like Glow Up, like Weatherman, like DUI, it wasn't that great to me. But on this album, like dang near every single song has got something catchy about it. The choruses at this point have become just infectious. And lyrically, he is the best he's ever been, which is really nice to hear. He's sort of going more introspective into getting into a bit of more of a storytelling bag on some of his songs. And overall, just kind of growing up, I can kind of hear the growth and the greater amount of experiences that he had, but also his ability to reflect on those experiences is also a lot better. That's one thing that I feel like people don't really talk about, is that, not any hood guy or not any, relationship traumatized person can be a rapper. You have to find your way to express said trauma. You have to find your way to express said relationship strife. And TECCA really was able to find a way to really talk about that in a deep and meaningful way on this album. There was a lot of more varied song ideas that were fully fleshed out that I really, really enjoyed. And just want to talk about the features really quick. So I don't think there was any features on We Love You, TECCA part 1, and that contributed to the album. You could really feel how long it was, right? We Love You, TECCA 2 had some features, and they were good. Most of them performed really well, with the exception of Uzi on Dolly, which I think is probably TECCA's worst song ever. And overall, like, his features really did his thing. But then on We Love You, TECCA 2, not only did all the features did their thing, but what was cool about We Love You, TECCA 2 is I feel like he got the right people for the right songs. You know what I mean? Like for that Beach Time track, Seaside, he got Ian Dior, because that's who you need. I'm trying to tell you, right? For the Rage track, he got Trippie Redd, who was kind of jump off of the back of Trip at Night, sort of on his Rage Cardi arc. And Chief Keef, who was a surprising addition, but really did his thing on the record. Of course, the best verse on that was Gunna on Repeated. One of the smoothest verses I have ever heard from Gunna. Man, that was fire. And overall, just I feel like on We Love You, TECCA 2, there was a real effort to place the certain artists in the correct spot, which was really, really, I could tell that there was something intentional about that. Same thing again. Nav again went crazy on his portion. So overall, really, really enjoyed it. Yeah. Now going into some of his weaknesses, I definitely felt like off rip, like I said, the writing is a bit vapid. I'm not exactly going to TECCA for the most crazy conceptual stuff, but even still, a lot of it felt kind of simple and cookie cutter by the books, especially in We Love You, TECCA 1, where he would just kind of throw out ideas and then go to the next one, which I wasn't really a fan of. Another one of his weaknesses was his verses, that I do feel need to come up, especially compared to how catchy his choruses are. His verses are a bit boring and lackluster from just a content perspective. This, of course, also kind of goes into his writing, but I feel it's more apparent in his verses that seem to take a kind of a dip in quality. And also, and We Love You, TECCA 1, his flows were very just boring, and some of them were frankly off of beat. This is an issue that would eventually be corrected in We Love You, TECCA 2 and Virgo World, but definitely in the beginning of his career, his flow was a heavy hit or miss, right? And I think the biggest problem that really holds TECCA back from being like a top 7 artist is really, really the length of his albums for me, honestly, right? I feel like his albums are just too long, and I don't feel like, and TECCA is a fairly young artist, and so the problem with this is that, like, basically he doesn't have, in my mind, he doesn't have enough song ideas to really, fully commit to the 20-song project idea. And so a lot of stuff ends up getting repeated. For example, Never Left, Money on Me, and Lot of Me, all of it, like you could have just scrapped Never Left and Lot of Me and just kept money on me. And that would have been good. You know what I'm saying? Um, and it makes his albums, very hard to get through. And some people might be thinking when I say this, well, what's wrong with a long album? With more music for the fans, perfect, and they make more money. But I more think of it from a legacy perspective, right? Can I look at this album and say that there are no misses, right? And if you look back in history, most of the albums that are like truly like pack a punch are either albums with stories or shorter albums, because we can look to those albums and say, man, every single song was a slapper. You look at Culture, you look at Meet the Woo is the best example. 9 songs, and that is one of the most influential and hardest albums in New York history, right? Only 9 songs, but still absolutely fire. And Pop would eventually learn to carry a larger album on Shoot for the Stars, Aim for the Moon. But Meet the Woo one as a starting project, just 9 tracks, was absolutely insane. And there's nothing inherently wrong with a larger project, of course, but you have to be able to carry that project. And for younger artists who are still getting their feet under them, I feel as though it's a tall task that you may not be able to deliver on, and so you end up just having a lot of repetition and sort of exhaustion throughout the album process, that I think overall, again, while you're giving more to your fans, I think the overall quality of the album is going to go down in that sense. So yeah, that I think is the biggest problem. Like, genuinely, I feel like if TECCA cut some of his songs down, I do feel like he would be a couple spots higher on my ranking of the top 10. Speaking of that, by the way, I have to come out and say it. I was wrong. I have to say it. I was wrong about TECCA. And this goes into some of his strengths. I can sort of segue. I was wrong about TECCA. Virgo 2 is a far better album than I think it gets credit for. And for that reason, I definitely think that he deserves to be on the top 10. I would put him at 10. Editor's note here. So actually, I made a mistake in my ranking that I really, really regret. That being that Coast Contra is not actually from New York. So instead of K Flock being knocked off and TECCA being at 10, I'm going to have Lil TECCA at 9 and K Flock being at 10. Sorry, y'all, for that mistake. Um, but absolutely, I think that he is number 10 at this point. I do think that he usurps K Flock, in my opinion, at this point in my music listening experience. And we will see at the end of the year if he can maintain this, period, or this, if he can maintain my sort of appreciation for him, and if no one comes off and knocks the throne down. But I would say right now, definitely TECCA is my number 10. I do feel like, given how much albums matter, I do feel like TECCA definitely usurps K Flock, in my opinion, as the 10th best artist in New York right now. Again, I'm just counting 2020's discography, so We Love You TECCA 2, or We Love You TECCA Part 1 doesn't really count. So let's talk about his appeal, right? Basically, I would say the number one appeal of TECCA is his choruses. Absolutely fire, bro. From the beginning of his career to the end of his career, man, this man has incredible choruses, and they get better and better and better with time. At this point, like, they're just absolutely addicting, right? Like, they repeat it like Money on Me, you feel me? Absolutely did that, man. Come on. Like, these are some great choruses by TECCA. I love how smooth he comes on here. I love the vocal melodies that he uses. He always seems to know the perfect melody to use, in his choruses, and I really, really enjoyed that. I feel like he gets into such good pockets that I really, really appreciate throughout his choruses. Another thing that I really like is his voice, because it is definitely, you can definitely tell the auto-tune, and you can feel the sort of automation. Editor's note here. In listening to his music, I think it's also important that I discuss the way that TECCA's music has been recontextualized for me. I think before the whole wave of hypertrap came in, I kind of just viewed him as an A Boogie clone. But now with the onset of Yeet and Ken Carson and this hypertrap wave, I kind of can see the art behind what TECCA is doing with his EDM sounding voice and what he is really going for, in a way that I really couldn't prior to that working. But I definitely, again, I feel like it always comes down to what you're compared to. And, compared to a Yeet or a Nav or a Ken Carson or even a Jaleel, I feel like Lil Tecca very much stands proudly above those artists, but is in the same artistic realm. Like I said, a lot more technology involved, but he still finds his own way to bring his own personality into it, which I really, really appreciate. And so, yeah, that would definitely be the two main things for his appeal and strengths. With that said, let's get into my top 15. I couldn't cut it down to, man, I was trying to cut it down to 10. I couldn't cut it down to 10. I had to give y'all 15 because this guy had just so much fire packed in that I really, really appreciate it. So, yeah, let's get into it. On Bossa Nova, I was a bit disappointed with what he was able to do, but I saw some potential for him with Rage Beats, and I'm really happy that he came around and tried it again. Bro, you cannot tell me that these songs just don't have the craziest flows, man. Some of the nicest flows from TECCA, absolutely. Man, TECCA pouring his heart out is his bag, bro. I'm trying to tell y'all, bro. TECCA pouring his heart out, one of the best parts about his music. These are some of his deeper tracks, and what I mean when I say the lyrical maturity that I liked from TECCA on Virgo World and We Love You, TECCA, too. Definitely hoping for these songs to have, even more fleshed out ideas as they come about. But for, standalone tracks, they were definitely pretty solid. The energy, just the sheer energy and like menacing whatever that he had on this song, No Discussion, man, fire. Y'all heard me talk about it, bro. Seaside has got one of the nicest choruses. Like, such just beach vibes. I just imagine laying on a beach with this song. Dope. Bro, TECCA on Afro beats is insane. I'm trying to tell you, absolutely fire, bro. Absolutely fire. TECCA on Afro beats does not miss. Repeated is my favorite TECCA song. When I heard it, I was like, the chorus was crack. The Gunna feature was crazy. TECCA went off. This feels like a song with just nonstop energy and nonstop fun that I absolutely loved, man. This thing was a killer song. Really, really enjoyed it. And with that being said, thank you all for watching. All 15 songs will be in the description below. And yeah, peace, guys. Have a great day.